You're listening to the Cash Podcast, creating affluence, success, and happiness with your financial surgeon, Adam Koós, President and Portfolio Manager at Libertas Wealth Management Group at libertaswealth.com.
All right, everyone, I'm here today with Elizabeth Blount McCormick, Uniglobe Travel Designers, to discuss whether it's safe to take a vacation these days and how to travel confidently in this new normal we're living in. But before we get started, as always, a few housekeeping items. If this is your first time listening or watching, then thanks for joining us. The Cash Podcast is produced weekly, and as stated in the intro, Cash stands for creating affluence, success, and happiness, and that's our mission. My hope is for you to learn a little bit more in each and every episode so that you become more successful, wealthier, happier, and more educated than you did before you started listening today. So come back often. Feel free to subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and in addition, you can also follow me on Twitter at Adam Koós and on Instagram at Financial Surgeon. Last but not least, any links, visuals, charts, and other educational resources are on our website. So that's it with all the formalities. Let's go ahead and get started here. But before we get into the meat of the conversation, let me introduce Elizabeth. Her company, Uniglobe Travel Designers, has two offices actually, one in Columbus, Ohio, and another in Atlanta, Georgia. And for almost 40 years now, they've been helping people plan their travel in an ever-changing landscape. And I think that what we're going through today is probably no exception. But what I think is especially interesting about Elizabeth's company is that she focuses not only on leisure travel, so like many travel companies, she helps those planning a vacation, a destination wedding, family reunions, or taking a cruise, but she also has a heavy focus specializing in corporate travel. So utilizing their vast network of relationships with local, national, international suppliers, they're able to obtain corporate discounts for those companies looking to travel for work or incentive trips for their employees. Now, on a more personal note, Elizabeth is a Wellington School graduate who went on to graduate from Spelman College with honors. And speaking of honors, she was also an award-winning entrepreneur, being named a National Association for Women Business Owners Visionary finalist, and was also selected as one of only 12 women welding the way by the Women for Economic and Leadership Development. She's a recipient of the Frederick Yates Memorial Scholarship Minority Business Award, which helped her earn a scholarship to the Tuck Executive Education Minority Business Program at Dartmouth. And she was also honored with the Business First 40 Under 40 Award, and the United States Small Business Administration awarded her with the SBA Minority Small Business of the Year Award right in Columbus, Ohio. In 2014, Mayor Coleman appointed Elizabeth to the Jobs Expansion and Transportation Task Force at Columbus Regional Airport Authority, and that same year, the Columbus Chamber of Commerce named her as a finalist for the Small Business Award of Excellence. She's a big-time volunteer for many organizations, including the Mansion Day School Board, Young Presidents Organization, Alvis Board, International Women's Forum, the National Association of Women Business Owners, NABO, and she is a member of the Ohio Martin Luther King Jr. Holiday Commission and the Columbus Chamber of Commerce Board. Last but certainly not least, Elizabeth has extensive experience in not only helping her clients book their own travel experiences, but she's been around the world herself, traveling to Tunisia, India, Portugal, Peru, Mexico, South America. So thanks again, Elizabeth, so much for joining us today, and for all our listeners and those watching for acting as a sounding board with all the experience that you have in the travel industry.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really look forward to just talking about what's happening and how travel is changing. I believe that knowledge is power, and I think the more people know what to expect, the more comfortable they'll be as we're traveling in this new normal, right? Until we get a vaccine or understand what the treatment looks like. So I just think it's a good time to have this conversation. You know, I know people are itching to get away, as you and I were just talking about. Right. I'm looking at renting a house somewhere just to have it with our own private pool near a beach, just to have a moment, just to exhale, because it's just crazy right now. Yeah. I need a moment, right?
Yeah, well, speaking of, this is not a virtual background behind me here. Normally I'm in my office, but I'm actually recording this from Nag's Head in the Outer Banks. And what's interesting, it's kind of, I mean, you and I, we planned on doing this podcast maybe a few weeks ago, and I wanted to do it specifically while I was going on vacation, but I wasn't planning on being here. My plan was to be in Siesta Key, and we had booked the Siesta Key vacation in January. We had every intention of going, and then the coronavirus started, of course, and then we kind of started wondering, are we going to cancel it? Are we not going to go voluntarily? And then we thought, you
Right.
know what, if we've got a condo and we're not talking to anybody and we're careful, might as well be social distancing on a beach as opposed to at home in Columbus, Ohio. But then
Yes.
Florida wouldn't allow any vacation rental tenants to show up. They literally canceled it on us. So we had to cancel our flights. We canceled our trip there. And then we just decided to find some. So we literally booked this house last Monday to show up on Sunday.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it's been interesting for sure. But obviously, we decided to get away, but regardless of the pandemic, you tell me, are we crazy? I mean, should we not have done this?
No, I think you're fine. I mean, as long as you're social distancing where you are, then it's not a problem. And I think just for mental health as well, people just need a
Yeah.
change of scenery because for what is it? We're on month 3 now of people like being of sheltering in place. So as long as you're careful and observing, the rules as far as COVID-19 is concerned in the place you're going to, I don't think it's a problem at all. And
Okay.
so many of my clients have been asking about getting away and looking at the domestic options because the thing is with the flights and the airlines, there's so many routes that have been removed at this point. So like, for example, typically I would fly in to DCA. There are a number of flights that leave Columbus every day, but I ended up driving because they don't have the nonstop right now.
Oh, wow.
So, I think that driving and actually was kind of refreshing for me just to drive. I was listening to a book on tape and I was like, oh, okay, this isn't bad. But I just think for mental and emotional health, it's important. And there are safe ways that you can do it. You can travel. And I think the way you did it, Adam, makes sense.
Okay. I mean, at this point in the game for people, closing on June, obviously this is the last, week of the month. I mean,
Mhm.
should people be canceling their travel plans for June, July, in your opinion?
You know what? I would want to, check with the suppliers and look at where they're traveling to see if there is there a quarantine in place because there's some states that have that. Hawaii has a 14-day quarantine, so it's like unless you're going for a month, you couldn't really enjoy your luxurious vacation there. So my advice would be to check to see if the resort is it open. What are their sanitation practices look like? Are they doing health checks? Just to understand also if you're around other people, what does that look like? Are the pools available? Are they implementing different rules? When you're going to the grocery store, they have like 6 feet apart. Just to understand, is that how the resorts or the experience will be? We've looked at some options where social distancing just kind of happens. There's a luxurious glamping, so it's like glamorized
Glamping,
camping
yeah.
resort called Paws Up in Montana. And it's a huge resort. We featured it. We've been having podcasts and we've been having WebExes and cocktail hours with clients and different suppliers. We've been featuring them the last couple of months.
Hmm.
And when I asked, I said, "Hey, is this something like is the social distancing happen?" The place is huge. Absolutely, it does. So people are looking at going to state parks or hiking or where you're just around a few people, the people that you've been quarantining with. And I think that's fine, but I would just recommend people check to see if places are open. Because like your experience with the rental house in Florida, they
Yeah.
completely just said, no, we're not taking any guests. I mean, things keep changing day by day, right? And it's like,
Right.
for early June, I would check now to see, hey, can I come there for the first 2 weeks of June? And then, first week of June, you can check to see late June if the places will be open. And you want to know what their practices are going to be. I mean, I'm encouraged that hotels are going to implement strenuous cleaning practices. I'm actually happy because hotels typically are
Right.
very gross. So I'm glad that they're going to go above and beyond and people are going to wear hazmat suits and they're removing all of those, high touch point areas and removing mini bars. I'm fine with all of that. I'm just glad that when I lay down at night, we can be more confident and secure that it'll be clean, right? I mean, there's nothing worse than walking into a hotel room and you see hair or just gross. You know what I mean? It's just disgusting. So I'm
Yeah.
actually happy that's changing. I really am.
What about people that book a vacation? Let's just say they're thinking about booking a trip, or maybe they already booked a trip. I mean, are you aware of any laws or anything out there that says that these companies have to refund you, or is it their choice? I mean, how does that all work?
You see, it's the thing is that it's still fairly new, right? With
Mhm.
COVID-19. So what we always say to people is get insurance and get it and purchase the
Okay.
cancel for any reason. Just get the travel insurance because I think things were happening so quickly, right? And when we were advocating on the behalf of a number of our corporate and leisure clients because it was so new, things were fluid and changing consistently. And with that, and the reason I say that is because like some suppliers on the vacation side, they in some cases were able to get people to rebook at no penalty, which was great for a year later, right? So if we had people that booked for 2020, they just said, you know what, I'm going to go in 2021. And in that case, we were able to rebook. We've been able to get discounts for people. But full refunds just haven't happened because it's so new. And if you think about it, in the hospitality industry, all of these vendors, suppliers, they've lost so much money. So it was really difficult for them to just refund things because business is just shut down, right? From March, it's been really just kind of non-existent. So I always say, like, and we've been looking at insurance companies as well, not only for leisure, but also travel insurance companies for corporate, because, you know, we're starting to have these conversations with our corporate clients, just saying to them, if you have a traveler, you know, one of your business travelers is traveling on behalf of business, if they have to be quarantined, what does that look like? Is there an insurance coverage for that? Because that still may exist. We just don't know. So, you know, we have not seen any new coverage yet that is calling out COVID-19. So my recommendation is get the cancel for any reason. Insurance is better to be safe than sorry. And typically the way it works is that whatever your insurance price is that you get your money back less the insurance price. So it's worth it. Yeah, it's definitely worth it. And at least you're getting something back.
Right, as opposed to just, losing the cost and no trip, right?
Right.
What about cruises? I know aside from planes, prisons, and nursing homes, cruises are probably up there in terms of one of the scariest places during this whole pandemic. Should people avoid them for now, or what's the story there?
You know what, in my opinion, I think the smaller ships that have, like I typically travel in Azamara, which is, it's a part of the Royal Caribbean family. So it's Royal Caribbean, the kind of levels Royal Caribbean Celebrity and Azamara. So it's their higher end. And the max they have is 650 passengers. And the smaller ship, I love doing that. Like we were supposed to cruise, I'm really sad. We were supposed to cruise September 5th to the 12th from Venice to Athens. And it was super, we had to cancel it, obviously, right? Because things were just happening so quickly. So we're going to postpone that trip to another time. But on the smaller ship, like with Azamara, with Viking, Seabourn, Regent, you haven't heard anything about any outbreaks or issues. It was the bigger ships where we would hear about when you had thousands and thousands of passengers. So in my opinion, I think the smaller ships, you'll have a better opportunity to be safer because there are not so many people around. And honestly, and it was funny because I have a good relationship with my Azamara rep, and we were talking, and he said, I mean, he's right. I mean, they had hand sanitizers all over the place, but they've been doing the fist bump for a while and not shaking hands or anything. So they were kind of, you know, ahead of that. But if you think about, and this is really interesting to me though, too, like, and I'm sure you saw the headlines, but a couple of weeks ago, Carnival Cruise Line was up 600% in bookings in August, which to me, like, I don't know. I just wouldn't take that chance. I think a smaller ship, you'd have a bet. And they are actually talking about taking your temperature, presenting a health certificate. And I think I talked about this before, Adam, like that's even to get on these cruise ships, which is great. But also one thing that we need to start thinking about, and it's still developing as we know, when you're traveling abroad, you may have to have a World Health Organization certified passport, and you may have to present your health certificate. I mean, these are just things that are going to happen. And also, unfortunately, at this particular moment, the U.S. and U.S. passport holders are not viewed that positively at the moment, right? So it'll be very interesting to see what countries welcome us in, right? I mean, you just don't know right now. And you look at Australia, New Zealand, and Sweden, and other countries that just had it together quickly, and they were able to jump on the problem. Where they're already, you know, in Australia, New Zealand, I mean, obviously they already have an agreement where if you're from if your passport holders in either one of those countries, you can be fluid and go back and forth. I've been hearing that there could be a similar alliance with like Latvia and Greece and some other countries as well, where if you're passport holders, you can do that. But for the U.S., it's we don't know, you know, and I think it's something it's scary and it's unfortunate. I mean, you also love to travel, and we take at least one big international trip a year, and there's just so much unknown there, right? And I think that, and I mean, the Caribbean and Mexico, that's fine, but it's like going to Europe, going to Japan, all of that, it's just not going to happen, I don't think, for a while. It'll just be interesting to see how things develop. And all of that, of course, will be determined based on the vaccine and the treatment, and that's so unknown. I mean, so many people are working on it, we're just not sure. But I think it's just an important point. People just need to, it's not the most pleasant thing, but people need to think like, I might not be able to just travel abroad for a little while until things are in order, right? It's just something that I think people need to start having the conversation about. We need to be realistic about that here in the U.S.
Well, you mentioned flying. What about flying? I mean, should people avoid flying altogether at this point and
No,
I believe
I would fly. I mean, if I could have flown here, I would have done it. Because the airlines have implemented, again, this is great for us too, right? For the people that love to travel. I mean, these enhanced cleaning measures, the flying on a plane is actually safer in cases than being in environment. I mean, because the air is circulating around, it's one of the safest places to be. So it's like, I would fly, and I'm just hoping that the airlines will start adding more legs. I was supposed to go to and act in more routes and city pairs because that's obviously has changed. But my sister and I, we were going to travel for her birthday to Mexico in April. And obviously things changed. And at one point we just, flying anywhere from Columbus can be a little difficult. You always have to connect. We were flying Delta. We were going to connect in Atlanta. And just before we canceled our trip, I was just watching week after week how at one point I was going to have to take 3 flights to get there and travel all day. I was like, this is ridiculous. So, I think that the city pairs and routes will increase. A couple of weeks ago, I posted something on LinkedIn where in Minneapolis, Delta was adding like at least 100 new flights a day. So I'm thinking things are going to, it's encouraging, for us, we have business travelers that have still been traveling despite everything that's been happening. We have a number of healthcare systems and hospitals, so they have to. So, we're getting feedback from our clients that at least Atlanta Hartsfield, it was the gentleman was in the Sky Club, so the Delta Sky Club, and he mentioned that there were at least 100 people there. His flight was 70% full of business travelers. So I that's encouraging to me. And this was a couple of weeks ago, and it's only going to get better, So I would fly. I just want the airlines to put, it's just, there's so many different components that affect this, right? It's like, are people feeling safe? Are cases going up because all the states are open? So it's like a domino effect of all of these factors, but I would definitely fly. I would have flown here this weekend, but couldn't. And I didn't want to fly to Dallas instead. I just thought driving would be faster.
Well, that Siesta Key trip we were taking, the first time the Southwest flights got, instead of direct, they were flying us to Denver to connect in Denver to go to Tampa. And so we canceled those, and then we booked another set of United flights with one stop in Chicago, and then those were just canceled. And then when we finally, there was 4 flights on any airline available that day, and the cheapest was $1,100 per ticket just to get to Florida. It was ridiculous. So kind of gave up, obviously. But like I said, they canceled the trip anyhow. But I heard that they're actually, are you required to wear masks now on planes, no matter what the airline?
Yes, that's what I've read so far. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is that I just, TSA, they're changing their procedures just before, and they've changed at some airports across the country, but before summer travel gets into full swing. So they're not going to take your boarding pass. You actually have to scan it yourself and not taking food and things out of your bag because they're trying to avoid that high touch situation and high touch contact. But I think that even with the one thing that people need to be aware of is that getting to the airport, for a while they were saying, 2 hours. Sorry about that. They were saying 2 hours, before, but now you really need to, and then the kind of time kind of slack from that, it's time people could kind of push it, right? Like, oh, I've got TSA pre-check, I can get through. But now with the fact that this is happening, with the social distancing and 6 feet apart, I think people really need to take that flight preparation time into account, like getting to the airport earlier, just so that you're not frustrated because that 6 feet apart it's just a new process, right? And even being in the boarding area, I mean, with Delta was one of the kind of leaders, I think, of kind of taking a stance on what they wanted to do. And they were boarding the plane from back to front and allowing first class and economy comfort passengers to get on board whenever they wanted to, just to try to avoid that human interaction. And then United kind of followed, and I think American did it as well. But still, it's like, people just need to understand it's going to be different for a while, especially until we get a vaccine, until there are proven success rates from the vaccine. And because of that, and if you're going to travel, you're going to fly, just be prepared. for a different process. I've been reading and having a lot of conversations about the fact that it may in airports when you're flying, they might take your temperature before you walk in, right? And that could happen. And it could happen even before, I think JetBlue, before you board a flight, they're taking your temperature. So just for people to understand, like, it's going to look different. Give yourself, plenty of time to get through the new process, because things are changing to travel now. And but travel, people love to travel. Yeah, exactly. Post 9/11. Yes.
Frustrating. Yeah.
The same thing. That's right. Mm-hmm.
Now, I think you kind of alluded to this earlier, but I mean, with travel insurance and so on, but I mean, is now a good time, you think, for people to book travel maybe later this year or book something next spring? Are there good deals available for travel?
So here are a couple of things. It's interesting because the thing is that, again, the airlines and the hotels have lost a lot of money because they haven't even been 10% at capacity, right? So because of that, we have not seen these crazy reductions in package prices. Now, I will tell you that one of my leisure consultants she had priced someone for a trip to Universal in June. And then when she priced it for September, it was like $1,000 less. Now, I don't know who wants to go to a park like Universal right now, but we've seen that. But in general, we haven't seen a huge, and it also depends on the market, right? So we haven't seen a huge decrease in airfare or like with our suppliers, because again, they've been hurting too. So I wouldn't expect it to be significantly less or even flights, right? In some cases, we have a client that was flying out to New Mexico and we booked it the day before. It was only $323 from Albuquerque to Columbus. I mean, that's insane, to Columbus. But that doesn't mean if you were going out to LA that Delta flight won't be $1,400. You understand what I'm saying? So it depends on the market. It depends. And I don't want people to think that there are going to be these crazy deals out there, because I just wouldn't expect that, just because of the state of the economy in the world, and that hospitality has suffered so much. We're always, when we look at trips for clients, we'll look at a number of suppliers to see where we get the best value. But we have not seen anything really crazy where you're like, oh my gosh, if I book it now, or if I book it for, the end of the year, it's going to be so much cheaper than June. Haven't seen that yet. Nothing. And things could change, because I'm sure they're reevaluating, but they're trying to capture as much profit in sales as they can, with the lull and the deficit for these last few months.
Well, even at least with the flights, they can reduce the number of flights that are available, But with hotels, I mean, you can't reduce the number of rooms that you have. I mean, they still exist, it's brick and mortar, right? So it's a little bit tougher for them probably. But what about people who are not at risk? I mean, are there places that, you would recommend people travel to that maybe are lower risk, that don't have to worry as much?
I think the thing about it is that, it's just, I think that everyone has to be careful, because there's so many things that are unknown, right? So, like my mom is almost 80 years old, right? So I've been really careful about being quarantined and not interacting with people, and I've been really strict about that, because I don't want to. She's older; she could have a compromised immune system, right?
Right.
So I would just, I think I was saying this to you before. It's like those trips where social distancing just happens, like hiking, or Colorado or Montana or going to Yosemite, something like that. I think regardless of where you're traveling, you have to be careful, just because there's so many things that are unknown. So low risk or high risk, to me, there just really isn't a difference. It's just about being careful and really following all the rules to keep yourself safe and to keep others safe as well.
I have a feeling that since you mentioned Colorado, Montana, and Yosemite, that's part of the answer to my next question. But I mean, what would you say are I'll call it some, or the top 3 or 5 low risk activities that you can do on a vacation these days, or you would recommend?
Yeah. I mean, definitely hiking, anything, fishing, anything that's outdoors where, you're just social distancing anyway. Right. And a lot of these places and resorts that are partners that we work with, they were already social distancing even before this happened. That's how they kind of operated, right, with the activities and exploring that part of the U.S. So I think that those types of activities, obviously you wouldn't want to be in a pool with 30 or 40 people. That's just ridiculous, because you can't, like with the antibody test and you don't know. And there's too many things that are unknown. And there's so many people that are carriers that don't realize they have it because they're asymptomatic. So, I would suggest anything where, you're with your family, but you're kind of isolated doing an activity, right? Where there are not hundreds of people around. So the beach shots, like being at a beach, I would love to do that, but I want it to be where we have our own little space, right? We can get it where it's not packed and there are not thousands of people around. So it's just because of the current state of the world, we just have to be cognizant of that and aware. And when we're making decisions, make sure that we still have to practice social distancing. We still have to practice.
Yeah.
We still have to wear a mask. This is just kind of our new world that we live in.
So yeah, it's almost like people are getting used to it. It's getting old. Like down here, I will say that things are different in North Carolina than they are in Ohio, drastically different. And I'll get into that in a second.
Right.
I mean, what about the high risk things that you might want to avoid? You mentioned pools, like what happened in the Ozarks. You were telling me offline.
Yes.
Restaurants, things like that. I mean, what do you think about all that, honestly?
Yeah, I just think that I thought it was kind of reckless last weekend. I couldn't believe people were doing that, and I mean, I love, and Columbus, we have so many amazing restaurants and I love eating out, but we've just been doing carry out so far, just because still, even though you can sit on a patio, because I'm scared. The problem with this is that you can't account for people practicing the same way that you do, right? So everyone is it like some people are getting together and having barbecues and things, but you know where that person was every day or every second for the last week? No. So I think it's the accountability. That's what's stressful to me. I'm just like, that's why for me to come to see my sister, she's been quarantined, so have I. It wasn't a big deal because we know that we're both healthy. But it's just, I think it gets kind of stressful. And then, and there's so much unknown, even about kids, right? And the effect that this has on them. And, if you had a little one and then they got really sick and I personally would just stay away as much as I possibly could from situations where there's just a large mass of people.
What exactly? So I saw the pictures and memes about the Ozarks, but I didn't read the story. What actually happened?
I don't know about the results of the number of cases, if they increased or not. I'm sure they did, but people were just acting like it was normal. You know what I mean? They were just drinking in the pool, partying, no mask. I mean, it looks like there were hundreds of people there and just enjoying the Memorial Day. I mean, typically we're all at pools or on vacation during this time, right? During Memorial Day weekend. And it's like the kickoff to summer. And people were just kind of, and there were so many people there that, again, who knows what their exposure is, and you can be asymptomatic. I think that's one of the scariest parts of this thing. Like, so and then you spread it, and you never felt sick, and you're fine, but then you infect all these people. And I just think people were just operating that it was like BAU, business as usual, and it's not.
The pictures look like those old spring break MTV shows.
Oh my, yes, they did. Yep, like Miami, right. You're right. That's exactly what it looked like.
Let's just say I book a trip. How loose are the policies for cancellations and their penalties these days?
Yeah, I mean, again, all of these suppliers are still trying to figure it out.
Okay.
And so that's why I always suggest is get the insurance, because let's say, to travel to the Caribbean, it's a good time to go to get the best value. It was in the past, I should say, was in the fall. So if you because kids are in school, so the resorts typically would have really aggressive pricing. And you could get a deal, right? So if I had people, like, we booked a number of destination weddings. So if I had clients asking, hey, when should I get married in May, or should I look at the fall? I always say look at the fall because it'll be significantly less for your guests for a destination wedding. Or I would say avoid holidays. So I remember a close friend of mine I was in college with, she was thinking about Memorial Day weekend, and she got married a week before that, and the price was like $500 or $600 less because she didn't book it on a holiday weekend, right? So the thing is, though, is that, again, get insurance, because we have actually had some success. We had a woman who booked a destination wedding for October in Jamaica, and even Jamaica was actually one island country that they nipped COVID in the butt really quickly, right? So there aren't that many deaths. I sent her the the website on Jamaica, and just to explain, like, look, there've only been a few deaths. The country has under control, but she was the only person. The bride and her fiance were the only people that purchased insurance. So we could cancel that and get their money back, but because of our relationships, for the 5 other family members who booked rooms, we're able to get them a refund with no penalty. And that's just because because we have a relationship. So, if you're booking something, on your own and you don't have an advocate, like, get insurance because that'll protect you. But if you're working with a travel management company, we'll make sure that you understand, like, you have to have insurance because it makes such a difference in a process like this where, my client, they got their money back right away, and we were able, thank God, to utilize our relationship on their behalf to get the other guests, but the other guests didn't get insurance. I think travel insurance is going to become very significant, especially when because we keep hearing and all the news is saying there's going to be another outbreak, in the fall. And, I think that that's going to make people just realize, like, I need to have it. I had a couple of clients that didn't have insurance and had trips to Europe that we had to cancel. And I mean, we, again, fought for them, but it was really hard, right? We're just like, look, come on, like, no one's traveling to this place. No one's traveling to Athens, Greece right now. We need a refund. But that was like harping on people and email.
Did I lose you?
And I think that these travelers that have bumped into that, they're like, isolation, right? It seems it's like, protect your trip, protect your money.
Okay, I think I just lost you just for a quick second there, but
okay,
it's my connection. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, I can speak for our watchers and those listening. I can speak from experience about travel insurance. Of all the traveling I've ever done in my life, I never bought insurance. I would never do it. I just thought, there's no way I'm going to have to cancel this trip. And then my last remaining grandparent was struggling health-wise, and I thought, you know what, I should probably buy it just in case. And at the time, anyway, the year that I bought the insurance, she did not pass away, but she did the following year. But that year, she got really sick, and we had to cancel the trip. And it was insane that they refunded me 100% for all the flights and for the resort. It was crazy. And it's one of those things where anybody who's not buying travel insurance, if you're going to travel, not buying travel insurance right now seems just insane. I mean, I don't know why anybody wouldn't.
Right.
It's worth it. I mean,
right. No, I agree with you.
I've heard a lot about Airbnb struggles in that department, VRBO, other homes, being forced maybe to take, I don't know, to try and keep things safer and keep things clean. I mean, have you read anything or heard anything yet about the smaller places?
You know what? It's interesting because there are a couple of things that I've read. One, I think that VRBO, A and B, they're still trying to figure it out, right? Like and I'll mention this as well, like with hotels, same thing, because they're trying to figure out what does the cleanliness or what is their level of cleanliness they have to make. What is the mark? Is it 5-star or 5 diamond? That means that they're probably top notch, right? But because of that, the clients are going to be faced with a decision. And I think with Airbnb as well, how much do you want your Airbnb to be clean, right? And so what's going to happen is Airbnb and hotels will have to come up with their standards. And then I think they're going to be different options. So for hotels, I think that what hotels are going to say is, do you want us to clean only once or twice? But I think that's going to affect cost. And I think the same thing will happen with Airbnb, right? And I think that Airbnb will have to increase their cleanliness and their standards because they don't have a choice in the matter now. And they'll probably have to leave the home or the apartment empty for a little, like after people have gone in and sanitized it. I mean, that's one thing that I found really interesting that the Four Seasons Hotel in New York is doing. And actually they are a leader where globally people in hotels are calling the Four Seasons to figure out what they're doing. Like they're removing the mini bars and also considering moving the soap and shampoos, because again, that's a high touch point. Additionally, you probably, when you travel to a hotel, you probably won't sit in a restaurant anymore. I've read a lot about hotels presenting you with like a little bento box of food that you can pick up. Room service delivery would happen, but the thing about the Four Seasons that I liked as well is that they were saying that as soon as the guest checks out, first of all, they're going to do a thorough cleaning of the room anyway before you check in, which you and I talked about. We both like really nice hotels, which I'm like, great. Because I always like to stay at places that are similar to where I live or better. That's how comfortable I want to be, right? You're just like, oh, you can lay your head down and you're comfortable. So the thing about the Four Seasons is that they have this new strenuous cleaning process in place. But then also, after a guest checks out, automatically someone goes in with a hazmat suit. They're sterilizing the whole thing. Then it has to be empty at least for 24, 48 hours before another guest to get in. So and then they have bags for linens, so you can put them at the door and they'll take them out. So it's just, I feel more comfortable that way. And I'm glad that they're doing that. I think honestly, Adam, there's going to be a cost associated with that, right? I'm sure, because some people might say, you know what, I know it's been cleaned. I don't want anyone else to come in during the duration of my trip. And I think that'll be a price that hotels charge. And then if another customer says, I want my room cleaned however many times or to the extent that they can, I think there's going to be a price to it, which I would pay for that. And I think similarly, Airbnb is going to have to do something similar, right? They're going to have to make a decision because I think for now, and I've never stayed in Airbnb because I like hotels. And prior to this, I loved having the restaurant option, the fitness center option as well. And I wanted to mention something too. One thing that I've read about hotels is it looks like if they have a fitness center, they're going to schedule guests so that it's not overcrowded, which I like that too. I mean, exercising is really important. Yep, you make a reservation for it, which I think is awesome. But I think Airbnb, I think that they're still trying to figure out how they're going to do this and how they're going to respond. And with that, they're going to have to think about things. And I think you'll see price differences with those as well. Like if you want thorough cleaning, this is what it looks like. But they're going to have to prove that this place has been cleaned and empty and it's been sanitized before people check in, right? And they're going to have that duration of time. They're going to, and I've read so much information about how hotels also, they're going to have to prove their staff is healthy. So it's going to be like the cleanliness of the place, and then also the staff hasn't been infected. I mean, there are all these different levels for people to feel comfortable. I've read that people may have to have their temperatures checked when they check into hotels, but also when my team is making reservations, we could be asked about our client's health. So which is just, again, just understanding that these changes are happening, just to be prepared for it. And what I'm looking for from the hotel side is just even like a little like video recording. So you understand, what is it going to look like when I check in? I think if we know what to expect and that, then that'll be a lot easier. If we know, set the expectation. And so that you're not discombobulated or stressed out. You're just like, okay, I know what's coming. I know what to expect. And that's why I've been reaching out to a lot of our suppliers just to find out, like, what do things look like? And they're changing every day. But again, so we can tell our clients, like, you're going to have a mask. You need to get to the airport. You really need to abide by that 2 hour ahead of your flight rule, maybe even more time because of social distancing. It's just things like that. Again, if people know what the expectation is, then they're okay. You're okay. You know more about what the situation is going to look like. I was on a call with American Airlines a few weeks ago, and the executives were saying that if a passenger, first of all, you have to have a mask on their flights, but if a passenger took the mask off or didn't have one, they would be asked to put one on, and then also they could be removed from the flight. So I know. So people need to be aware that this is really serious and to be prepared. And there was another WebEx I participated on, and someone was saying, like, you should recommend clients to have 2 masks because the mask, like, this saliva gets wet. So just have another one when you're traveling so you can refresh it. So it's just those kind of things that we need to be ready and prepared for, just because travel was stressful after 9/11. Then we kind of all got in our groove, and now it's going to be stressful from this, and then we'll get in the groove. So it's just about preparation and then expectations and then understanding what the experience could look like. And then you'll be able to ebb and flow and have patience with it and grace, because it's a different world we live in. And that's how we need to be.
I think I've got 5 masks now.
Oh yeah, I have a lot too.
A winter mask, a summer mask, office car.
Yes.
Yeah. You mentioned the Four Seasons. What about public pools? Hotels, resorts. I mean, are they safe to use, you feel like?
I don't, it's interesting because we've been asked that for some of our clients that are traveling domestically this summer. And as far as the resorts and hotels, they haven't confirmed they're going to open them yet. I
Oh,
think again, now I have heard that being in a pool with chlorine, it can't spread, you're safer, but still, again, if you have 50 people in there, or even 10, right? Before they're saying 10 or less is better to be in a group with, then I still think there's a risk. And I have not heard any of our hotels like say anything about maintaining kind of before, pre-COVID yet.
got it.
So
Okay.
I think it's again, like what we were talking about before, for people that are, if they were traveling to a resort or traveling to a hotel where they're planning on spending time at a pool this summer, again, find out what those policies look like, because that can completely change your view of what, of what you thought your vacation was going to look like
Different
versus what it will
experience.
look like
Yeah.
now. The experience is going to be completely different.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, I mean, I will say that, traveling to a new state, even though we were really reluctant to do so, this early in the game, it's been really interesting for my family. Governor DeWine, I think, has done an amazing job of setting safe policies during the quarantine. I think he's done a great
Yes,
job since the reopening started. But here,
I
where we're at
agree.
right now, in North Carolina, not to beat him up or anything, things are so different. I mean, for example, I was telling somebody the other day that when I'm in Ohio, when I'm in Columbus, I'm guessing 80 to 85% of people have masks on. Here, it's more like 25%. And then
Huh.
we went out to breakfast. I think the second day we were here, and we called them in advance, asked them if they're open, asked them if they're how they're operating. Wanted to get some information before we went, and they
Hmm.
removed tables and so on. And our biggest concern was the air recirculation, of course. But we get in
Right.
there, and while they're doing their best to clean, but I mean, when you're turning over tables really fast, that big glass bottle of sugar that they're doing their best to clean. I mean, how clean can it really be? And then there's this basket of butter and jelly on the table that
Oh
I'm
my
sure they're not
goodness,
cleaning
Josh.
every one of those little packets off between every table. So I guess my question is this: for those of us who do opt to travel here in the next several months, from the drive to rest stops to flying, staying in a hotel, being at a beach, whatever. I know this is a lot to ask, but what are some tips that you share across the board in terms of doing so safely?
I think exactly what you did. I would call, right? I mean, the first thing I would do is I would call the resort or the restaurant just to be that detailed. Like, what are your practices and policies? I mean, the thing is that I would be more comfortable going to a restaurant where they actually have just enough time to actually clean, like to your point, to do that extensive cleaning.
Yeah.
So I think that it's just understanding like what procedures have you put in place. In fact, there are a couple of resorts that we were looking at traveling to this summer, but the one thing that I want, and a lot of these resorts, they were closed for a few months here in the US, and now they're opening. Like a lot of the dates are June 1st and mid June. But one of my questions that I have is, what does social distancing look like for your location? And two, what are your sanitation practices look like and cleanliness procedures?
Right.
I think that those are the questions that you want to understand. And then also health of the staff, because if you have to worry about that, like it's just understanding like this place is safe. They've been practicing and implementing new procedures. And I personally would feel more comfortable knowing that. So for our clients that we're looking at going to some places, the one question they've been asking, I've asked the same, like, what do your practices look like? How, and just what are your procedures? What is my experience going to be like? How can you confirm that I will have a healthy experience, right? But I think it's really making those phone calls or having someone advocate for you to make those for you so that you can understand what is the situation, is it healthy, is the experience, the people that are staffed at this particular location, they are in good health, there won't be any issues there, and then you can have a good trip. But
Sure.
really is
Get it
making
all
those phone
done.
calls and having someone advocate and just tell you, hey, this is what's going on, and so that you can make an informed decision.
So when you get back from your trips, kind of closing everything out here, do
Hmm.
you believe that at this point in the game with, I know that there's lower cases now, that the death rate's going down, it's summer, obviously.
Right.
Should people be self-quarantining for any period of time if they do travel?
I think it really depends on your exposure to people and experience, right? So if you've been social distancing and you don't have anyone in your immediate kind of circle that has a compromised immune system or could be in that category, the high risk category, then I think people can use judgment, like and really look at their family and look at where they've been and as long, again, it's like keeping the thing you have to keep in front of your mind is exposure and being around people, because we don't know if their practices are the same as what ours are. People might not be as strict as we are. Can't control anybody but us. Exactly. So like for me, if I traveled somewhere without my mom and came back, I would stay away from her for 14 days because I'd have to. She would quarantine herself and I would too, because I would be afraid that something could happen, especially if I was in an environment where I was around just a number of other people. Right. And so I think that, and my uncle is 78 years old and he works with me every day. Same thing. I would just have to do that because I wouldn't want to get them ill without even knowing it. And until testing is frequent enough where we can just pop in someplace and get a test and we can get the antibody test. And I think that, again, it's keeping us safe and keeping others safe too. And I think that's what we all, if we're mindful of that, then cases will go down and people will stay healthy and we'll get back to a new normal, but hopefully close to where we used to be.
I hope so. I really would like to see so. Get back to as close to the old normal as possible.
Me too. Sure. I agree.
All right. Well, if any of you would like to get in touch with Elizabeth, she can be contacted at 614-237-4488 via email at letsgo@uniglobetd.com. And you can also head over to her website at uniglobetravelpartners.com to learn more, or better yet, plan your next trip for business or pleasure, or both. And thank you again so much for being here and offering so much of your information. Again, I really appreciate it. I did a lot of research on your company, and I was really, really impressed. And I'm sure that our watchers and listeners will be interested as well. And I do apologize to everyone, by the way. We did have a couple internet glitches, and I'm not sure which in the interwebs, whose fault that was. We'll just blame it on the ISP. But that's all for today's episode. We realize there are thousands and thousands of podcasts out there, and you chose to listen to ours. So thank you so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube and iTunes. Feel free to share this podcast with your friends. And if you want more educational information, you can sign up on our website at libertaswealth.com to receive our screencast videos and articles that we send out on a regular basis. Again, you can also follow me on Twitter at Adam Koós and Instagram at Financial Surgeon. So thank you so much again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Cash Podcast with your financial surgeon, Adam Koós. To see any charts or images that were mentioned in this show, or to check out additional articles, videos, and other educational resources, head over to libertaswealth.com.